is no longer about doing less harm. It's about doing more good. When starting up a new business to improve the business, having a sustainable business model is essential to achieve the expected targets. So, what is the right approach to develop a disruptive and sustainable business model is a major question that the young entrepreneurs have in present. We believe today you will be able to gain a better insight on right approach to develop a disruptive and sustainable business model. And it will be exactly a productive investment for potential investors with us today. A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Organized by the Rotaract Club of University of California, together with Ed Scaled Up, Agrithon is a challenging platform that caters to a wide range of participants from school students to industry professionals. It will solve most of the challenging issues in the agriculture sector by hosting the first ever mega agri-tech hackathon in Sri Lanka. Innovative agri-tech solution which would emerge through Agrithon will be directed to reach the next level of for the successful implementation process. Consequently, building a sustainable agri-tech ecosystem in Sri Lanka. Agrithon has reached the final stage after a remarkable successful session, and we have 10 teams which have been selected for the final rounds. To help you become the next agri-tech expert, Agrithon brings you a series of webinars, and I warmly welcome you to the 10th webinar knowledge on right approach to developing disruptive and sustainable business model, which can be considered as a very trendy and very impactful concept. With the aim of building up potential and innovative young leaders in tech industry, the Agrithon team thought why not conducting a webinar specially related to the disruptive and the potential business model. So today we have the best expert to give a basic understanding and improve your knowledge on the right approach to develop disruptive and sustainable business model. So today we have with us Mr. Shafraz Salim, Head of Strategy, Fonterra Brands Lanka, Sri Lanka and Indian subcontinent. He has 12 years of corporate exposure across Regit, Benckiser, Unilever and Fonterra in Sri Lanka. And overseas, also he is a lecturer and corporate trainer across multi-markets, a talented personality who has awarded the World Young Achiever Award from World Education Congress. Good evening, sir.
Good evening to you. Hope you're doing good and safe.
Same. We wish you the same, sir. Today, Mr. Shafraz Salim will use his experience and sound knowledge to provide insight into the concept of what is the right approach to develop disruptive and sustainable business model, which can be considered as a very trendy and impactful concept. Sir, the platform is now yours.
Thank you, Samadhi. Thank you for that introduction and kind words. I will take on now, and what I will do is I'll start sharing my screen so that I can show you a quick presentation. Okay. Okay, guys, we have gotten into this virtual world. I know the new normal. I'm still old school. I know how to use Zoom, that's okay. But then, I mean, internet connection, connectivity, and all these problems can occur. So Samadhi, my kind request to you is, in case you see me kind of my connection not being stable, just speak up so that I don't keep talking and it doesn't benefit the audience. Yeah. Thank you for that. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining in. It's a pleasure and a privilege from my end to be joining into this session where there are, predominantly very strong minds and people who are very eager to look at a disruptive model. So it's a great feeling for me to be a part of this. So I thank the organizing committee. I thank all of you for having me a part of the panel. So when I was being spoken of in terms of this particular session, what really came to my mind was look, it is all about how do I now support these great minds in this call, where you are very good at your technical part of it. For example, you identified that groundbreaking disruptive technology that you think is going to be the game changer in the future. So me coming from a strategy, from a marketing, so I'm predominantly a marketeer, a brand person who then moved on to strategy. So and I've also been involved in a few startups in the past. So my objective is predominantly how do you ensure that you create a product that is both disruptive. So what you create needs to be kind of disruptive. It has to be groundbreaking. If you start creating something that is me too, that is already there, that's also okay, but it might not really be the best thing we are looking for. So my objective is how I am assuming. So in my mind, the starting point is I believe you have a disruptive idea. That's how I'm starting off, right? So I would be unable to kind of give you, let's say, an idea during this presentation. That's not my objective, but my idea is how do I then allow you to take that disruptive idea and convert it into a sustainable business model. So that's what I am predominantly focusing on today. Before I start off, let me kind of go into that first slide and tell you that the world we are living in today is VUCA, right? VUCA. We live in a VUCA world. That's the reality. Now, when you hear the word VUCA, some of you may have heard of these words. Some of you might wonder what is he talking about. This is English, by the way. The English, is a funny language where you bring in multiple words and then you jumble it up and then you have a shorter form for it, right? So we live in a VUCA world, especially accelerated by Corona that has happened. But even before Corona, we've been living in a VUCA world. What does VUCA mean? VUCA means we live in a world of volatility, yeah, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. If you talk to your parents and your grandparents, I don't think their world was as VUCA as the world you live in today, right? So my starting point is, before I take you through how do you prepare for the disruptive and sustainable business model, my objective is to make you understand. You guys live in an information age which is not the same world that was there 10, 15 years back. Today you are living in very much changing times. I believe we live in exponential times. The world around us is changing in a big way. You need to, as budding young entrepreneurs, need to understand that first and come to terms with it first. So if you are not agile, if you are not flamboyant, if you are unable to think of multiple options, you would be left behind. While I understand there are multiple startups coming up in the world today, it is a tough place out there. So how do you empathize or accept the fact that we live in a VUCA world, which is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguity? Let me go a little deep into these four words. How does VUCA impact our world? So if you really think about it, let's go through each of these letters that we've had and how does it impact our world. So VUCA is affecting you and me today, and it will affect you even more when you become entrepreneurs tomorrow. Number one, volatility. Volatility means what? Volatility means the fact is we are living in changing times. The world is changing rapidly. You see the way our currency exchange rate has moved to 205, right? You see the kind of Suez Canal episode that you would have read a few days back or 1 or 2 days back, where because of that cargoes are not moving, which could affect your global prices. So these are happening all of a sudden, right? Go 18 months back, we never heard of what Corona was. We never wore a mask. But today, for everyone, your cost of living has gone up. Now you need to buy masks, you need to buy sanitizers, you need to be careful when you travel. So even if you want to have an event, you need to have social distancing. So we live in a very volatile, changing environment. Nothing is the same now. Everything is changing. So when things like inflation are changing big time, cost of living, as I said, inflation is changing big time. Imports have got restricted, for example. Other countries are not buying too many products, for example. Why? Because they are unable to afford, or they want to look at local sources to buy. So a lot of things changing. We live in a volatile world. When the world is changing volatile, what happens is predominantly most of the time it impacts your purchasing power. For example, if inflation goes up, it affects your purchasing power. If your currency devalues, like the Sri Lankan rupees is happening, your imports become expensive. So we are paying more for that. Unemployment goes up, it affects your purchasing power. So in a volatile world, in a very rapidly changing, so think of volatile means rapidly changing world, it is making consumers' life very difficult because every day, because your salary doesn't increase like that, right? Your salary is constant. If at all, you get a 10% increase.
So when your salary is constant, all the other external parameters are increasing big time. It immediately affects your purchasing power. So consumers are struggling today is the reality. And this is not a corona phenomenon only. You know, even before corona, across the world, multiple countries have been struggling. So you as entrepreneurs need to understand your consumers. It could be another business, that's okay. It could be an agri farmer. It could even be the end consumer. All of them are having a difficult time because of volatility. Then uncertainty, right? If you take uncertainty, you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. You're living in very difficult times. We don't know whether there'll be a third wave of COVID, for example. We don't know whether the vaccine is effective, for example. I'm talking about coronavirus, for example, right? We don't know what Joe Biden is going to do, for example. Which country is going to go through a difficult time or an easy time? Lot of uncertainty. You go back to your grandparents and talk to them. Their world was predominantly certain up to a large extent. Our world is very uncertain. We don't know what could happen tomorrow. So there are a lot of ifs and buts in our life. When there are ifs and buts in your life, what consumers try to do is they become risk averse. So you don't want to experiment. You don't want to commit to anything. You want to hold back, right? When things are certain, people don't know tomorrow, would I get this product or not? If there is an angel investor, if he invests in your business idea, he doesn't know if today maybe your business idea makes sense. Tomorrow, if things change, maybe your business idea may not make sense. So we are living in a world which is very, very uncertain, right? When you are living in a world that is uncertain, consumers will not be willing to experiment. So you need to, if they don't experiment, what do you need to do? Give them something they're very, very comfortable with. Don't make them take too many risks, right? So we live in an uncertain, we live in a fast changing world, and we live in a world that is not just fast changing. We don't know what is happening around us. There are a lot of ifs and buts. Then complexity. We live in a world that is very complex. Talk to your parents or grandparents. When they wanted to buy something, what do? If they wanted to buy something, they'll go to the close by boutique shop, right? They'll go to the close by boutique shop, or they'll go to the close by supermarket, and they will say, look, give me this something. Or they might ask for the shopkeeper, can you recommend something I should buy? Or they might talk to their neighbors, they might talk to their family. Purchase decision was very simple. Today, purchase decision is very complex. When you want to buy something, you check on Google for the reviews, you check Facebook reviews, you check WhatsApp groups, you talk to your friends, you talk to your relatives, you have multiple sources to access information. So when people make purchase decisions, the world is very complex. There are multiple variables out there. Our consumers are always on. Always on means what? They're always connected. Laptop, tab, mobile phone. We are always on. We are always connected. So when you want to buy something, you have multiple variables that you are thinking of, multiple channels where you can get information. So you can't give the consumer something if you can't convince it. That's something you guys as entrepreneurs need to understand. When you make your product, please don't be lost in the idea. You might love the idea because you created it, but ask yourself, in today's world, in the information age, would your consumers really buy into your product? Consumer decisions are very complex today. Gone are the days, for example, if I'm hungry, for example, sorry, I might have a plate of rice, but today it depends on a lot of things. Am I going out? If I go out, I might want to have something which I can hold and eat on the way. Do I want high protein, for example, low carb, for example? So people have complex decisions they are grappling with. So you as entrepreneurs need to understand what are the things consumer will look at when he buys your product. And the final one is ambiguity. You can't understand consumers. I have put a lot of high-end brands here. See, if you really take these brands, if you talk to your consumers, and some of you may be using some of the brands, if I ask you, why do you buy a particular brand, for example, a Givenchy, a CK, why are you buying a particular brand? It is very difficult for you to give me a rational answer. Your answer is more emotional. You want to use a brand. Now, just because you wear a particular Rolex watch, that doesn't show you a different time. No, it doesn't tell you. If I wear a Rolex watch and it tells me what's going to happen in 15 minutes from now, that's fantastic. But it will not say that. It will show me the same time. But you wear that because you want to communicate something. It's a status symbol. So your decisions are made due to an emotional reason. But sometimes if you want to buy a washing machine, for example, which is at your place in your room, that purchase decision may not be emotional, that may be rational, that may be functional. I want a washing machine that saves water, that washes clothes quickly, that fits into a small place. So what I'm trying to tell you is consumer decisions are unclear. We live in a world of ambiguity. Ambiguity means things are not clear, right? Uncertainty means I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Ambiguity means there could be two reasons why I'm doing something. Even consumer is confused. If you talk to any consumer and ask them, why do you buy a particular brand of t-shirt, which is a high-end brand, they might tell you, no, 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 it feels very comfortable, long lasting. But bottom line is you want to show that brand. So what I'm trying to tell you is you need to understand before you get into business modeling, understand the world you live in. The world you live in is volatile, is fast changing. So when you create an innovation, when you have a business idea, ensure that that business idea can last for some time. Don't create something that sounds fantastic today, something small happens, it becomes redundant. Don't do that, right? Understand that you are living in a world of uncertainty. Things are changing. So when you create a business plan, if I was you, I'll create a business plan, but I will look at contingency plans. I am creating this today. If something goes wrong, maybe can I change it this way? So as an investor, the investor is feeling good that you've thought of multiple things. Think about it. No, during the COVID lockdown, that 1 year, all the gyms were closed. But what did some gyms do? They started offering online lessons. So they had an alternate game plan. I'm not saying think of a pandemic, but think of small things. If the exchange rate changes, if the government gives a subsidy, think of multiple avenues because you live in an uncertain world, right? You live in a world that is complex. That is where if I was you, I will understand the consumer deeply. If you are presenting your plan, please do some research. Please spend time with some consumers. Do 1 or 2 interviews. Find out from them what they feel about your product. What do they think is lacking in your product? It will help you a lot. And ambiguity. Again, spend time with consumers and understand the root cause, the real reason why they want to buy your product. Because remember, what you are creating needs to win in the market, has to address a solution, right? You are creating something that supports the agri industry in Sri Lanka. But remember, your solution needs to really address the challenges in the agri industry, needs to be convincing for the people who will be finally using it, right? You need to think of all those. That's why I spent my initial time telling you the world we live in is VUCA. VUCA requires you to maneuver through the storm always. It's going to be very challenging. Imagine yourself as an entrepreneur. See, most people join a corporate world because you get a fixed salary, right? I mean, even corporate world has a lot of uncertainty and all of that. But in the real world, when you become entrepreneurs, you are dealing with a volatile world that is uncertain, complex, ambiguity. It's tough, right? Especially for young entrepreneurs. See, everyone's life is tough because of VUCA. But when you are a young entrepreneur, it becomes even tougher because you're young. Things are changing around you. Things are complex. You can get demotivated. You can get affected. So you need to always keep in mind that there is going to be a challenge. And I'll put this fact out there. This is not to demotivate you. 90% of startups in the world fail. 90% of the startups in the world fail today. This is a research that is done in the US, in the Europe, across parts of Asia. 90% of startups fail in a year. VUCA makes the world very challenging. It's because the world is VUCA. If you started the venture 25, 30 years back, things were very stable. No, the currency, technology was not changing big time. Look at the way technology is changing today, right? I was reading an article where in China, they're creating a mobile phone which can be sold for close to $20, 20 US dollars. That's roughly 4,000 rupees with all the digitized technology. I know there are very cheap phones from China even today, but this mobile is going to be at the next level where it's going to have everything and sold at a $20. The world is changing very much. Today, your hard drive, which is 1 TB, could be equal to multiple computers that you used to buy 10 years back, right? So that's how the world is changing today, right? And if you really ask yourself, why do startups fail? There's a reason why startups fail. This is a research that is being done across 210 companies that started in the year 2018-19. Why do startups fail? According to their founders, it was a research that was done. 42% of the people who they kind of interviewed or spoke to, right? They said, you can't total this up to 100. So don't do that. But I'm talking about people give multiple reasons. What I'm trying to say is, for example, not everyone's going to give only one reason, right? People can give more than one reason. So out of the people who got interviewed, 42% said my product did not have a market need. I created a product, but there was no need. Then what happened? And sometimes it's shocking, right? When you hear something like this, it's very shocking because you think, when I create a product, everyone should be loving it. But that's because you love your idea. Don't get lost in that idea. When you do debate, what do? When you are a debater, you have two sides, right? Protagonist and antagonist. And what do? When you prepare for your points. You also pretend like you're on the opposite side and prepare for those points. So be not a pessimist. Have a professional skepticism, right? Be skeptic about some of the things you do. Challenge yourself. Have constructive criticism. Don't all 5 members in the group don't start loving the idea. Keep challenging your idea. So 42% said, unfortunately, I created something that no one wanted, right? There was no market need. If you really think about it, today Facebook is popular, Instagram happened and all of these things. But if you go 15 years back, there was a social networking site called High Five. I think it's still around. It created, but it did not succeed big time. Why? It was a fantastic idea. It was similar to Facebook, but at that time, internet penetration was not too much. So not too many people can support that engine. But as Facebook came in 2006, 2007, mobile penetration started increasing, digital mobile connectivity increased, it happened. So sometimes you need to understand, I am creating a fantastic product. Does the market need it? Market need it. You might think, yeah, market needs it because I am solving a problem. No. Can they use it? You might be creating an artificial intelligence product. That's fantastic. I think that's the intent of coming up with a disruptive technology. But your end users, can they manage it? Is something you need to ask yourself. Then 29% said it ran out of cash. So 29% means maybe some people would have ticked both, no market need and ran out of cash also, right? So 29% of the people said I ran out of cash. Why? What is the reason? You may have budgeted in the wrong manner. You may not have budgeted in the right manner. You may have over forecasted your earnings. You may have undercalled your cost, right? So sometimes you run out of cash. So when you go to your investor, please have a very realistic plan. It is not always important to put a very optimistic plan and sound very good in front of others. You need to go with a reality plan, a plan that finally makes sense, right? So 29% of the people said, I ran out of cash. Third people said it was not the right team. Very important. If you're putting up a business plan, if you're putting up a proposal, have a team. Team is two things. One is getting the right people. That depends on your recruitment. Secondly, put the right team structure. If your marketing team needs 2 people, have 2 people. There's no point having 1 person if you need 2 people. If your research and development team needs 5 people, you need to have that. Otherwise, you will fail. Superior competition. Don't underestimate your competition, guys. When you really put together your business plan, look at your competition. Sometimes your competition is not what you are thinking. I'll give you an example. If you ask me, who's the competition for Coca-Cola? Coca-Cola's competition is not Pepsi and Sprite and all of that only. No, water is a competition, right? Nescafe is a competition. So you need to look at a wider spectrum. That's why in the beverage industry, we say something called share of throat. Whatever that you drink down your throat becomes a competitor to a Coca-Cola, because once you drink that, liquidate yourself, you might not take something else, right? So understand who your competition is at the end of the day. Netflix is a competition to television, right? Not just Hotstar, whatever. It's a competition to television, right? Today, look at what television has become. Most houses, television is on, no one is watching, right? You're on your mobile. It's become a passive medium, not an active medium anymore. Some houses it's on mute also, but it's just running because you want to have the TV on, for example, right? The final one is your product is poor. Remember, guys, you might have the right market need identified. Maybe you have the right cash, you have the right team, your competition is not there, but your product has to be right. It has to deliver what it promises to deliver. It has to be easy to use, user friendly. On top of that, it needs to be something that can fit into the purpose, guys, right? All of these are critical when you create a product. So remember all of these. You need to ask yourself, have I got everything under control and right? So no point talking about failure. 90%, these are the reasons that fails. When you start doing an entrepreneurship or a startup, you want to succeed. How do you ensure you become successful? Remember this quote that I firmly believe in. Failing to plan is planning to fail. If you don't plan, you will definitely fail. So you need to plan. You need to do the homework before you launch your venture. You need to do the homework before you present. When you present at your final stage, you need to have done enough homework so that when judges question you, judges challenge you, you can politely, for that you need to, and for you to do this homework, I thought I'll put together a small, let me call it tool, which your organizing committee has already put as a part of your judging criteria, right? Which is the business canvas model. So this business canvas model, I believe some of you may have already used in previous rounds. This is the main purpose of my presentation with you today. I was called in to mainly explain this, so I will spend time here. But I wanted to first give you a bit of insight in terms of saying, look, you need to understand what you are dealing with. So if you take the business canvas model, this tool, or let me call it theory, consists of 9 parts, right? This part, if you can see my screen, this part on my right, customer relationship, customer segment, and channels, these 3 parts are externally focused. It's looking at the external environment. These 3 parts, key resources, key activities, and key partners, are inside out from the company, what you want to do. Finally, this and this has to contribute to something called value proposition. You do this and you do this because you want to deliver value proposition, right? And finally, while you deliver the value proposition, for your business to be successful, you need to have a revenue stream and a cost structure. And if you want to make a profit, your revenue stream needs to be greater than your cost structure. This is the simple philosophy of this model. I am now going to take you through each of these boxes, and that's the rest of my presentation with you. Yeah. Okay. So guys, if you have questions, I forgot to tell you, if you do have questions, I'll address it at the end, but you can send it on chat or whatever, and we will address it at the end. Yeah. So moving forward, I will start with value proposition. This is what I'm going to focus on first, right? Let's dig deeper into each element. Value proposition is what I'm focusing on. What do you mean by value proposition, guys? Whenever you create a business, value proposition is very simple. If I am the consumer, why would I buy your product or service? That's the simple question. If I am your customer, if I am another business, maybe if it's B2B, if I'm another consumer, maybe B2C, why would I buy your product or service? Tell me the why. That's the simple reason, right? Your product has to tell me a why. Value proposition is what is the final value you are giving to the consumer. I repeat myself, value proposition is what is the final value you give to your consumer. Because only if you give me value, I will buy, right? So why should I buy? It's because you're giving me a value. The question is, what should that value be? Either your value proposition or your product or service has to solve a wicked problem. I call it wicked, right? A problem that you have. Your product or service has to solve a problem experienced by your consumers or your customers today. Absolutely important, right? Maybe you might say there is a problem today. What is the problem today? Today, for example, consumers, like for example, let's take the dairy industry, for example, right? You might feel in the dairy industry, one of the main reasons why the dairy production of the small scale farmers are not sufficient is because they don't have access to artificial insemination or veterinary service frequently, right? So you might have that problem. So the question I ask you is, what can you do for that? You need to solve the problem of a potential farmer, or he doesn't have access to high nutrition fodder or feed to ensure that the productivity of milk goes up. Don't have enough. What can you do about it? Right? These are the questions you need to answer. Your value proposition is you need to solve a real problem, not a perceived problem. That's why I'm saying spend time with your customer. Is that a real problem? Or it needs to improve a lifestyle. It is not solving a problem, but is improving my lifestyle. But for you, most of your projects, the first one is more relevant, right? But I'm giving you this also because I want you to understand the full magnanimity of the theory. Yeah. So it has to either improve my lifestyle today, or it has to solve a problem. See, I buy let's say, for example, you buy a branded shades, right? It's not maybe solving a problem. You might buy a okay brand shades also, but it's improving your lifestyle, right? For example, when you buy a high-end watch, it's not solving a problem because I can check the mobile also for the time, but it's improving maybe your lifestyle, not from a tangible point of view, but maybe perception, right? So Alexa, when people buy this home assistant, what it does is it may not solve a problem, but it improves your lifestyle. It makes life convenient to you, which could be a problem as well. So your value proposition either has to solve a wicked problem, or it has to improve consumer lifestyle. So when you are presenting your final stage, when you put the business canvas model, always start with the value proposition, guys. As an investor, as a judge, they would be more interested in what is it that you are delivering to the customer and consumer. If that is spot on, rest of it will work. So always start with this and clearly define what is the problem. Always ask yourself, what's the root problem that is there? What am I solving? And by solving, what is the benefit to the customer, consumer, or the business? That is how you need to address this. And I'll give you some real life examples. So this was done by Amazon. These are called Amazon pills, right? So this is very simple. They give you these boxes, these pretty decent sized boxes. And for example, if I take Tide, Tide is a washing powder, right? Manufactured by Procter and Gamble, P&G. So if you take Tide, they'll give you this box and you can put washing powder inside that box. Okay. And as the quantity reduces, when it comes to a below point, what it does is it automatically, this device will place an order with Amazon to refill, right? And Amazon, either through their delivery service or they have drone services today abroad, through the drone, they deliver it to your doorstep. Now you have to ask yourself, I'm putting this in front of you because I want you to think. You're not going to create this, right? But I want you to think. What is the problem they're solving? Simple. They are solving the problem of people not having time to concentrate when they need to refill something. All of us forget, right? As universities, I've also studied 3 years abroad all alone. And I know sometimes these are some of the challenges you face. You forget. And then in the morning, you've forgotten your toothpaste. You wonder, how do I brush my teeth? And then you are running to the nearby store and getting something. People forget in the mad rush. So they create this device, which means you don't even need to order anything. It automatically orders, automatically gets delivered. So value proposition for consumers is what? Convenience. I am delivering convenience for you so that you don't have to think and order. Value proposition. Starbucks, right? If you take Starbucks today, most people, if I ask you what does Starbucks, what is the business they specialize in, most people will say coffee, but I say no. If you take Starbucks, earlier the mission of Starbucks was to brew a cup of coffee a day to every individual, every community, every neighborhood. This used to be their mission in the past. You know what the mission they're creating now they're working on it is facilitate human conversations. Starbucks says, I am not in the business of coffee. That's why when you go to Starbucks, you get tea also today, right? You get pastries also. Any coffee shop you go, they have everything. Coffee shops today are not to give you coffee. It is to facilitate human conversations. That's why they arrange the couch in a manner. They arrange the seating experience in a manner. They have a light ambient music because they want you to have conversations. That's what they're delivering. That's why people go to a coffee shop, not because you want to have a cup of coffee. I can make a good cup of coffee at home. So you need to understand what is the problem that they are solving. right? They can't have conversations at home. Where do they meet? They can't meet at each other's place. I'm talking about pre-corona time also, right? This is a place to facilitate human conversations. Take this green toys. You know what green toys is? Their business is very simple. They take all the fast moving consumer goods, that packaging that are there, like milk bottles, for example, right? Like cartons, for example. They use that and they recycle that and make toys for children so that it doesn't get wasted. It's a sustainable way of looking at things. Green toys, right? So I take, for example, the plastics and the waste that is there, convert it into toys. What is the value proposition here? The child doesn't care, right? Whether it is made out of milk pack or whatever it is, he wants a toy. The value proposition here is, if you are a parent, you are a responsible parent, here is an opportunity for you to contribute back to the environment. Would everyone buy this? No. You need to understand, whom am I targeting? I am targeting a customer or a consumer who believes in buying a toy that is also contributing back to the environment. Value proposition is not exciting toys. These toys are not the most exciting. There are better toys that is there in the market, but this has an angle of sustainability. These toys don't target the child. These toys target the parents. So value proposition is, I feel good emotionally that I'm giving back to my environment. Yeah. Then this company is a particular company called Pela, which is focused on making reusable, biodegradable phone covers. So if you look at their tagline, it's me to we, right? So they believe in making biodegradable phone covers, because otherwise what they feel is phone covers is something people use and throw, right? And phone covers has become a huge contributor to plastic waste today, or for example, environmental degradation today. So they created a product which cannot harm the environment, and you need it also, but you don't harm the environment. It's another company idea. So what's the value proposition here? Not fantastic looking covers. Huh? These covers don't look the best, but you target people and say, look, you are doing good to the environment. So you need to always think, what is the final thing I'm delivering? If you are launching this product and you think, oh wow, my proposition is I am giving fantastic looking covers, you are getting it wrong. You're not giving fantastic looking covers. You are giving a reason beyond the functional. You're giving an emotional reason to buy something, right? So understand, value proposition is the final value you give to the consumer, right? Take Uber, for example. What did Uber do? What is the value proposition? Very simple. If you take Uber, when Uber launched into the market, every country used to have taxis, right? But most of the time, taxis never come to your place. You need to go to a taxi stand, you need to call and tell them where to come to, a lot of hassle. And taxis were insufficient, because when a person wanted to get into a taxi business, he has to buy a separate looking car, register, and all these jazz. So Uber said there are enough and more people who have cars, their personal cars. Why don't I create a revenue opportunity for you? You go and pick them in your cars. And for consumers, they said, don't bother about anything. Stay at home and request. He'll exactly come where you are. And it was cheaper than the original taxis when it was launched. Value proposition is what? Convenience for the consumer and affordability than the other taxis that were there. Alexa, what is the value proposition? Convenience, and I will go a step beyond and say not just convenience, again prestige. That I have a home assistant, for example. Take Disney Hotstar. Again, it is a mobile app where you can watch a lot of things like cricket matches and all of that. Why was this launched? Because they realized people were not watching TV too much, because people were always on the move. So they said, how can I give you an opportunity to watch TV on your mobile phone? So value proposition is, what is the problem you're solving to consumer, or what is it that you are doing to consumer so that he finally his lifestyle improves. For example, imagine Sri Lanka is playing a cricket match, right? If you want to watch, you need to be only watching through your TV. You can't go anywhere. But Hotstar, I don't think is in Sri Lanka, but if you are abroad in a place like India, you can then start going on an Uber car and still continue to watch the match and hope our guys win finally, right? So this is the value proposition that you need to really understand. What is the value a product is delivering? Take a Sunlight washing powder. Take a Diva washing powder. What is the value proposition? It's not fantastic clean, right? Value proposition is affordable. It is not very expensive. But what does Surf Excel say? I am expensive, but I give you a stronger stain cleaning. So ask yourself, your product, what is the problem it is addressing, or how is it improving my lifestyle? And remember, when I tell you, I'm repeating this again and again, this can't be in your mind. Huh? You can't think, oh, I'm solving a problem. Talk to the customer or consumer and understand, is there a real problem? No point you coming up with a solution for a problem you perceive it. Maybe what you're thinking is a problem. Yeah. But maybe it's only experienced by 5% of the people. Then what's the point? Understand whether that problem is real or not. I'll give you another example. You take um, you take a product that Fonterra sells, right? Anlene, right? Anlene is a product that says we give you more iron, right? Your milk has more iron. Now, most people, when you tell this to, they say, dude, why do I need this product? I don't need more iron. So they don't know that there is a problem. But why is Fonterra still selling it? The reason is, actually, if you look at the Sri Lankan population, there's iron deficiency. So you need to first tell them that there is iron deficiency. You need to, either your problem is true, but people don't understand, at least then have steps in your plan that will work towards making people understand that there is a problem that is there. Yeah. Okay. So that's broadly on value proposition. Yeah. So that's broadly on value proposition. Samadhi, have I been audible so far? Any disturbances, any issues so far from a clarity? I can't seem to get you clearly. Am I audible so far? Okay.
So you have been clear so far.
Clear, right?
Yes, clear.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you. Okay, great. Okay, thanks, guys. So that's on value proposition. So I'm quickly going back, right? So now, as a business plan, you know what is the problem you are solving, or what is the benefit you are giving to the consumer to improve their lifestyle. It is clear, right? You are very clear on this. I'm saying not now, but you need to be very clear on this. How am I addressing a consumer problem or solving a challenge that they have? You need to be very clear on this part. Now, once you are clear on that, you need to ask yourself another question. What do I need to do to get this right? And that's where I'm going to next. After value proposition is done, I'm giving you the order that you could ideally follow, but you can change if you want. Then going to customer segmentation. I am solving a problem, or I am improving the lifestyle of which customer. You can't do this to everyone. For example, if you are selling these biodegradable phone covers, not everyone will buy this. Because your biodegradable phone covers, everyone doesn't relate to. Some person might say, no, I need a good looking mobile phone cover. So you need to ask yourself, who is my customer segment? It could be young people connected on social media who are very much having a voice towards sustainability, for example, right? You need to be very clear, who is my target market, right? If you, for example, create an artificial intelligence based product, you need to ask yourself, who is my target customer? Can everyone use it? Will everyone have the knowledge to operate it? You need to ask yourself. If you create an app, you need to ask yourself, who can use this? So a lot of questions you need to ask. I know I'm solving. Actually, you will, before you find out, this is the flow I'm giving you as you present, right? But if you really create a business plan, you will first identify your customer and then understand what is the problem that they have and what is the solution. That I understand. But when you present, it's always good to tell the judges and investors, this is the problem I'm solving. This is the value I'm giving. Who am I targeting? This is my market segment. And when you look at a market segment, you can divide it 4 ways. One is demographic. Demographic means what? Which age group are you targeting, for example? Which gender are you targeting, for example, right? Then psychographic. Psychographic is all about what lifestyle, what thought process does this guy have? Yeah. Is he more towards sustainability? Isn't he towards sustainability? Right? Is he more towards showing off and having a prestige quotient, or is this some guy who doesn't care about prestige? He is happy with what he has. Behavioral, is this a person who will go to work, for example, or is this a person who's a housewife, for example, right? Or is this a person who is freelance, for example? What is the behavior? Is this a person who goes out most of the time? You need to understand the behavior. And geographic is, where is this person, for example? Maybe your solution that you're creating may be suitable for up country, but may not be suitable for, let's say, for example, a northwestern province. So you need to be clear. My product will address this geography, right? My product will address a farmer who is full-time into farming, or my product will address a farmer who doesn't have enough time. He's doing something else also. He also doesn't have too many people. What kind of a customer segment are you addressing this, right? My solution will address a farmer's need who is young, who is connected to YouTube, who's connected to social media, who knows how to handle technology. You need to be very clear, guys. Otherwise, you know what will happen? Your judges and investors will say your idea is bad because they think it doesn't suit the customer, but actually you are focusing on a particular group of the customer. So very clear, be very clear who's the market segment. Now, for example, take Mother Care. Mother Care says, look, I only focus on kids or babies and mothers. That's my market segment. I don't focus on selling products for 18-year-old teenagers. Don't come to me. In life, guys, remember, it is easy to say yes. It is difficult to say no. So don't create a product that is everything for everyone. Create a product that is very specific. Create a product that only caters to a bullseye target segment. You can cater to 5-6 segments, that is okay. But be very clear who are those 1 or 2 segments you target. But when you do that, also ask yourself, is this target segment, the segment I'm focusing on, how much of money will it make for me? It has to be big enough. Now, for example, you take brands like Mother Care, don't do too well in Sri Lanka because this is a small country, 21 million population, right? If you take India, per minute 37 babies are born. Enough and more. You can do a fantastic baby products business. So you need to be very clear, is my market segment sizable enough? Then take LinkedIn, for example. LinkedIn is for professionals. Yeah, it is not about sharing. It's not Instagram, right? Where when you know how it is, right? Today, when people go for a dinner, outside dinner at a fine dining restaurant, it is not about eating the food. No, it is about having a good looking food picture posted on Instagram. So you get a plate of food, you don't want to eat. You want to take a picture first because that is more important than tasting the product, right? But LinkedIn is not for that, right? LinkedIn is to create your professional brand. Each of you are a brand, guys. You need to create a professional brand. What are you known for? Like Surf Excel is known for tough cleaning, right? What are you known for? You need to create a brand. So LinkedIn says, I don't want everyone. I don't want people who want to have fun and spend time on the social. They don't restrict or control, but the intent is I want to only focus on people who are professionals or aspiring to become professionals. For example, take Tom's. This brand is Tom's. Tom's is a brand that says, if you buy 1 pair of shoes from me, I will donate 1 pair of shoes to someone who deserves the product. So a needy person. So if Tom's brand doesn't make fantastic shoes, they make decent shoes. Shoes are not the best looking also. But the reason why they say is, if you buy 1 pair of everything you buy from me, I'll give 1 to someone else. Yeah. So who buys this product? Someone who wants to do good. So I can't sell this to every Tom, Dick and Harry. I will have to find a segment that is psychographic wise, someone who says every time I need to do something good for the society, right? So that's on customer segment. So I'm just toggling back. I want to keep taking you back to the main slide. Business canvas model. First, understand what is the value you are delivering to the consumer. What is a value that your product delivers to the consumer? What problem does it solve? Okay. And what kind of a lifestyle does it improve? Next, tell the judges or investors what is the segment you are focusing on. And don't just say I'm focusing on young people. Think of what is their demographic, young, age group, gender, whatever, geographic, where are they? Behavior, are they always out? Are they at home? Right? How do they behave? Psychographic, what is the thinking pattern? Doing good, saving time. You need to think of all of that. Yeah. Then you need to think of, guys, the channels. What do you mean by channels? How do I finally get this product to my consumer? Right? You have a couple of ways. You can either sell the product. Most of your product this won't be possible, but I'm giving you an example. You can either sell your product to general trade through a boutique shop that is there. You can sell your product through a supermarket, for example, right? Or your product can be sold at a big facility where they sell industrial equipment, for example, right? Or your product can be sold through phone calls, telemarketing, direct contact, yeah? Or you can sell your product through e-commerce, right? Or you can sell your product through social commerce. I don't have a website, but you can order through Facebook, you can order through Instagram, you can order through WhatsApp, for example, right? Today in India, they've launched a service where through WhatsApp, I can pay you. I can buy your product through what I can basically pay through WhatsApp. I don't have to go through a different website. So channels is all about you understanding how do I ensure that my product reaches my customer or my consumer. It is very important for you to figure out. I'll tell you why. Because depending on which one you choose, your cost will be very different. Most companies today are focused on e-commerce. You know why? Because e-commerce is cost effective. I don't need a place. You need to think of all of this. Or think, okay, look, I want to get to my customer, but I can't open outlets everywhere. I will tie up with a distributor, like an Abans, for example, right? While Abans does LG, can my product be sold across all the Abans outlets? Can I partner with them? Can they be my distributor? Can my products be sold through Singer, for example? Can they be my distributor? Right? Is something you need to always keep asking yourself, right? These are questions you need to ask. How will my product reach my customer? You need to be very clear. I hope you understand that. You need to think of the channel. How will my product finally reach my customer? Is where you focus on channels, right? The final one under the right side, which is external, is customer relationship. How do I want to maintain my relationship with my customer, right? Customer relationship is all about, guys, working with them, being with them, understanding them, keeping them happy. How do you want to do that? What are the strategies you have to do that, right? Do you want to, for each of your customers, allocate a separate manager to maintain the relationship, right? Do you want to, for example, have monthly meetings with your customers, right? Because it is not about just selling the product. Right from the start to talking to them, convincing them, selling the product, then maintaining your relationship with them, because they might need new parts for the product. They might need a new version that you want to buy. What are you doing to manage the customer relationship is something you need to ask. Are you going to have a customer care, for example, right? What would you do? For instance, you can use this model, customer journey. Customer journey means from the time I talk to the customer until he buys my product, how am I touching him every instance, right? I'll give you a classic example, right? Let's say I am selling t-shirts online. I have a website, okay? I might first do something very simple. I will go on Facebook and I'll start placing ads on Facebook. Yeah, everyone will start seeing ads on Facebook about my product. And I will use a very attractive, very exciting, very engaging post for people to see my product. Promotion. This is what you call promotion. Then suddenly, when the customer sees this 2-3 times, and if your product, I believe your product idea is very good, your customer will say, wow, interesting. And maybe you are selling to another business. Then you won't put it across Facebook. You might, on Facebook also, you might only put it for certain people who are working in companies. You'll put keywords, for example. Or you might do it on LinkedIn, for example, right? Or you might do it on, for example, let's say a Daily Mirror. A lot of people in companies on Monday morning, they might go on to Daily Mirror. Can I put a small ad there? So the moment this guy sees it, he might go on Google and start searching, what is this? Then you can use Google Analytics to say, every time someone types this word, artificial intelligence or robotics or whatever, My product should appear first. Then the person clicks that and goes to the website and he sees everything about your product, right? Then you can ensure that your product on the website, you have positive reviews by your consumers. Or maybe after website, you'll go to your Facebook fan page or Instagram page. On Facebook fan page, can you have positive reviews so that this person has seen your website, is happy. He's seeing other customers also appreciating you and he's now happy about it. And finally he purchases. So your customer relationship is all about not sending a birthday cake to customer. Customer relationship is all about how do you start the relationship and how do you continue this guy's relationship until he buys the product, and even after that he buys the product, after sales service. So you need to, in your presentation, have a strategy saying, if I want to sell my product, this is how I will start reaching the customer and this is how I will continue, right? Is something you need to potentially think of and have. Yeah, so that's on customer journey, guys. So going back to business canvas model, you need to understand value proposition is all about what am I finally giving to the consumer to better his value, to solve his problem, to improve his lifestyle or solve his problem. To achieve that, how do I keep engaging with my customer at every point? What are the channels I will sell this product through, and who exactly is the customer I am selling to? So these are things you need to be very, very clear when you look at this. Yeah, so this is absolutely critical for you, right? Now, finally, while you do this, what will you do inside the company is what we are looking at right now. So let me go to that. Activities, key activities. Activities is all about what will you do inside the company now to ensure that you can maintain this customer relationship, you can deliver the value proposition. Finally, for you to deliver the value, either solve his problem or improve his lifestyle, what are the activities that you would want to do? There are a couple of activities you can focus on. Here, if you are presenting to your judges, you need to focus on a couple of things. How will you buy the raw materials for the product? Number one. Yeah. How will you buy the raw materials for the product? How will you transport your raw materials to your company or to your factory? How is your transport going to work? How is your procurement going to work? How are you going to purchase raw materials? How are you going to transport it? I'm talking about a product first, and then I'll get to something else. How do you transport it? How do you store it? How do you convert it into a finished good? Right? How do you, for example, do after sales service? Now, I'm sure most of you are familiar with Michael Porter's value chain, right? Something along those lines. I put Michael Porter's value chain later also, I'll take you through, but something along those lines you can think of. So most of you, if you want to cover this section, the best way to cover this section is take Michael Porter's value chain and say how you will perform each of the function in Michael Porter's value chain. Inbound logistics, bringing the raw materials to your factory. Operations, converting raw material to finished goods. Outbound logistics, how do I take the finished goods to my consumers? Sales, marketing, how do I do marketing? How do I sell my product? How do I provide after sales service? Do I have a call center where people can ask for service? Can I send someone and then do the service? Or maybe I don't do a service, I have outsourced it to a different company. You need to think about that. How do I do, for example, administration? How do I recruit people? All of these you can cover under activities. This is where your activities comes in. Yeah. Okay. What is it that I need to do to finally deliver the product to my consumer is what you need to focus on. You can use Michael Porter's value chain for that. Yeah. Then you go into resources. Resources is all about what do I need? This is where for your investor, you can call out what is the investment is. For example, resources. What are the things you need to talk about? How much of money do you need? When you start the business, how much of money do you need? First year, I'm sure most of you will make a loss because you can't make a profit, right? You have to invest, you have to do marketing, you have to do advertising. First year, how much of extra money do you need to cover your loss? Second year, how much of money do you need? So this is all about how much of money do you need? How many people do you need? Because to do all those activities, you need people, no? How much of people do you need? Do you need inbound if you're developing an app, for example, app development facility inbound, right? So how much of money do you need? How many people do you need? Do you need a physical location, right? Do you need, for example, vehicles to do any delivery, right? Do you need machines to create this? All of these comes under resources. What are the resources I as a business need for me to finally give value to my consumer is what you focus on, resources. Yeah, I hope that is clear. Then who are my partners? Who do I partner with? I put Michael Porter's value chain here, right? So when you do activities, this is what you should focus on. How do I bring the product in? How do I do my manufacturing? How do I send the product out to my customer? How do I do marketing? How do I do sales? How do I do after sales service? How do I purchase the raw materials? If I'm developing a technology, how will I do that? How will I manage my people? How will I recruit people? How will I motivate them? How will I reward them? And everything else. How do I do finance, admin, all of these things come. Why have I put this model again for partners? Now think, to do each of these, guys, you don't have to do everything on your own. You believe in the, you know, the concept of crowdsourcing, right? How do you get others to do this? You know, cloud kitchen today. So today you can become a restaurant, delivery company without having a kitchen, because you make the food in someone else's kitchen, cloud kitchen. So now, if you are entrepreneurs, guys, one advice I'll give you is, please don't try to do everything by yourself. What can you give to someone else? Where do you need partners? For example, when it comes to inbound logistics, right? Can you get a delivery partner? Can you give your entire delivery? Inbound logistics means products being transported into the factory. Operations means manufacturing. Outbound logistics means final good going to the customer. These two, delivery, can you give it to a delivery company? If you're getting it from abroad, whatever, can DHL do it, for example? Or there are enough and more delivery companies in the country? Can they do it? Are they your partners you're looking at? What is the advantage of that? Sunk cost, initial cost will be low, guys. You don't have to buy vehicles, right? Operations, for example, why do you need a factory? Can I outsource manufacturing to someone else who can do it cheaper, right? When it comes to marketing, I'm not saying outsource everything, but I'm giving you ideas, right? Marketing, why do I need to do marketing? Let me give an advertising agency and let me tell them, this is my product, now you create it. But you can't come to the final stage and say, look, I don't know about marketing, I'll give it to an advertising agency, right? You have to say what your marketing plans are, or what are you going to do to reach your customer. But the work can be done by someone else. Why do you need to know that? Why do you need to decide whether you will do it or someone else will do marketing? Because the budget will differ. Are you going to sell? Or can you get a selling telemarketing organization and say, you call the relevant customers and call, we'll give you a commission basis? Does after sales service need to be done by you? Is there someone else who's also selling a similar product, not the same product, similar? Maybe they're already doing after sales service for their customer. Can they do it for you as long as you're not competing? Right? Procurement. I'm not, again, guys, I'm not saying outsource everything. I'm giving you options. You might choose what to do and what not to do. Procurement. Can you have a procuring agency who you say, these are the ingredients I want, you buy it for me? So that guy will pay, that guy will get quotation, that guy will find the best customer, all of that. Technology development. Can you give it to an IT house? Can maybe Virtusa do it for you, for example, right? Can you give it to an IT organization who develop? Maybe you guys might have the skills, but I'm giving you an idea. Can human resource management be done by a company like an Accenture, for example, who will manage the people entirely? So you need to realize that you don't need to do everything. Yeah. And then don't forget two other critical people. Who are your suppliers? You need to call them out. Then who are your customers? Customers, I'm not talking about consumer, the one who's finally using the product. Who is your customer? Is there a distributor involved? You need to call them out. So this partner section is all about you as an entrepreneur understanding who are my key partners I have to work with. Yeah. That brings us to the close of both left side and the right side. You know, this is the value I want to give to my consumer. Who is my consumer? This segment. How do I reach them? Through these channels. How do I maintain the relationship? This is what I do from the time I talk to them first. Second time I talk to them, they will buy it. How do I maintain the relationship? Who are the key partners I will work with to deliver the value proposition? What are the key activities I will do? You can look at the value chain. And what are the key resources I need? Money, let's say people, for example, infrastructure, all of the machines, all of those comes there. Once you've done with all of this is where your investors will now very much be interested in your cost structure and your revenue streams, right? For example, if you take your cost structure, there are three things you need to do very clearly. Budgeting is very important. You can't get this wrong. One is sunk cost, or we call it irrelevant costs. You need to tell your investors what is the startup cost you need, right? What is the startup cost you need? For you to start this, what is the money you need? To develop the app, how much do you need? Sunk cost is any cost that you incur before you made even a single rupee. How much of money do you need to develop your app? How much of money do you need to set up your server, right? How much of money do you need to develop the technology you're talking about? How much of money do you need to do pilot? You'll have to do pilot scale, right? You can't directly sell to customers. You have to see whether your technology is working. How much of money do you need to pay your team during this development stage? All of those things needs to be identified in sunk cost. Then when you start the business, what is the fixed cost? Always will remain the same. For example, if you need a place, that rent is a fixed cost. If you have people on fixed salary, that is a fixed cost, for example, right? If you're paying insurance on your building, that's a fixed cost, for example. You need to call this out very clearly. Then variable cost. What is the cost that will change based on the level of activity? What is your raw material cost, right? What is your transport cost? If you meet more customers, you'll spend more money. If you meet less customers, less money. So this will depend based on your ambition of how many customers you want to acquire, right? What is your marketing cost, for example? Depends on your budget again. Again, your investor may ask you, you are asking me 500,000 or let's say 2 million rupees for marketing. How many customers are you trying to get? So someone might ask you cost per customer. Remember that, do that calculation and keep it. Cost per customer, cost per acquisition. That means if you are getting 100 customers and your marketing is 2 million, 2 million divided by 100 per customer to get, you spend 20,000 rupees. Now, if that guy doesn't give you profit more than 20,000, there's no point even doing the business. Unless you tell me, no, I spent 20,000 to get this customer. You only gave me 10,000 today, but over the next 5 years, I will make more money through maintenance and all of that, and I'll cover the cost. These are three costs you need to call out under cost, right? Yeah. And then you will have details. Fixed cost, what are the things that's coming under? Variable cost, what are the things that's coming under? You need to call these things out. And the final thing is revenue stream. Most businesses make one mistake. They always say, look, my revenue stream is the money I make by selling a product. That is one. But in revenue stream, your investor, as per the business canvas model, there are a couple of things you need to address. How are you going to price your product? Is it going to be price premium versus your competitor? Or you're going to have a discount pricing? Are you going to start with a lower price so that customers come to you, then gradually you will increase? So you need to say what is the price you will charge the customer when you sell the product, right? So that's one revenue stream, right? Then once you sold the product and that customer has bought the product, how would you do maintenance, for example? Don't always think my only way of making money is sell the product, make the money. No. Then you ask yourself, how can I make money? How often do they have to change something in the product? For example, take Unilever's Pureit. There's an equipment. In that, I think there is some equipment called RO. You have to change it every 3 months or 4 months. So Unilever will give you this device. They'll make money through the device. They'll make money through the gadget also. It's like Gillette, right? Gillette, you buy the razor once, but then you have to keep changing the blade. So every time you change the blade, you make money. So customer, Gillette, actually razor doesn't sell for a very expensive price. They give it at a nominal price. They know once you buy it, you have to always keep buying the blade. So that's a way for you to hook the customer, right? So that they keep dealing with you, for example. Next, how do I, for example, make money through training, right? I can train people, for example. Now you can't train them the first time they buy the product, but how can you train, for example, right? How do I have plans of giving them a particular basic equipment but then have advanced gadgets which they can fix in the future, for example, right? Or you can tell yourself, my revenue stream is not about selling the product and making money. I am focused on subscription model. I will give an equipment, right? Monthly, they'll be paying me an amount for using my equipment. So you need to think of how you're going to make money. What is the price you're going to sell? How much are you going to charge for any continuous services you will give? And then you need to think of what are the ways. Is it subscription, one-off payment, maintenance? You will have to think of multiple things. Finally, remember your revenue should be greater than the cost for you to make a profit. And if I was you, when I do the business canvas model, I will also have a budget which shows how my profit is changing across the first 1 to 3 years, right? So if I go back one final time, you need to be clear on what's the value you are delivering. What are the things you will do with external environment to deliver? What will you do inside out to deliver that? What is my cost looking like and what's my revenue looking like? And your revenue needs to be greater than the cost. This is what your business canvas model will be all around. And I'll leave you with one final quote. Sorry guys, I've been not looking at time. I don't know the overhand. One thing that you need to look for is don't find customers for your product. Find products for your customers. You need to always look at what's the product I can find for your customers. And another advice I'll give you is in this VUCA world, the person who will succeed is the person who is agile. You need to be willing to change very quickly if you want to succeed in this world. And that's broadly it for me. I hope this kind of benefited you from a business canvas model. I know I might not have spoken exactly about your products. The intent is to give you an understanding of business canvas model, some real life examples, and how you can then potentially use it for your products. That's broadly it from my end, guys. Over to Samadhi, and happy to address any questions that you guys may have.
Thank you, sir. So after an inspirational session, we have reached the end of our discussion. So we can move to the next part of our session. Now we would like to open the floor for our audience to bring out their questions and doubts regarding the discussion today. So please free to unmute and ask your question in the preferred medium of language, or either you can use your chat box to ask your question. Okay, sir. So I got one question. So on the long run, what are the assessment we can do for our business to ensure stability?
Okay, thanks, Samadhi. I think it's from Ajit. Ajit, so if you look at broadly on the long run, what are the assessments we can do for our business to ensure stability? There's no direct answer because long run is obviously in the future. But what you can do for now is a couple of things you can look at. There is a model called FSA model, right? Feasibility, suitability, and acceptability. That is something you can do today. What is feasibility? Feasibility means, can I do this? Financial feasibility, do I have the money to do this, right? Manufacturing feasibility, can I manufacture this, right? For example, you can ask yourself, operational feasibility, can I maintain this? Do I have the resources to maintain this? This feasibility, right? Does it make sense? Does it make profit for me? So ask yourself, can I do this? Then you can ask yourself, suitability, does it suit what I'm trying to do, does it suit you as a person? Does it suit you as a company? You guys as a company will have a mission and a vision. You want to do sustainability, for example. You want to support the agri industry. Does it suit your mission? And finally, will my customers accept it? Acceptability. Do my customers like it? So one is, can I do it? Yes, I can do it, but does it suit me? Finally, will my customers accept it? I'll give you a simple example. You know, I'll give you an example, right? If you take Dettol, right? Dettol, sanitizers, liquid and all. What if Dettol launches fast food chain tomorrow? Like KFC, Dettol fried chicken, for example, for a layman's term. It doesn't suit the brand, right? It doesn't suit the brand at all. None of you would buy. So ask, does it suit me? Can I do it? Will customers accept it? That's something you can do. And my other advice is, guys, as you continue the business, you might have some external noise, guys, sorry. As you continue the business, always do check and adjust. Keep checking. How is the environment changing? How do I adjust? It's a continuous process. I hope I kind of answered your question.
Yes. So we can move into some more questions. If you have, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask, or if not, you can use again the chat box.
Pleasure. Thank you. Thanks, Ajit.
Okay, it seems like the audience don't have any question. So with that, we mark the end of a successful session conducted by Mr. Shafraz Salim. I would like to thank you for taking time off your busy schedule to enlighten us today with this session. Thank you once again, sir. I believe also the audience gathered a great understanding of this extremely interesting topic. With that in mind, let's end this session. Signing off, I'm Rotaract Samadhi Vijayatunga. Have a great day.
Thank you, Samadhi. Thanks for having me. Thanks for the kind words and thanks for the session. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you very much. All the best.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shah.